Tell us what happened to your aunt, Sansa.
You knew her well, my lords, my lady. You knew she was a troubled woman. She always loved Lord Baelish.
She is not grieving. Sansa Stark is building a weapon. And the weapon is a story. What looks like a traumatized girl giving testimony inside the Eyrie is something far more dangerous. This is the moment she stops surviving what people do to her and starts deciding what happens next. And she does it using the exact tools the people who hurt her put in her hands. To calculate the atmospheric pressure of this chamber in the Eyrie, we must understand what each person inside it actually needs. The Vale Lords need an explanation for Lysa Arryn's death that keeps their seat of power stable. Petyr Baelish needs to walk out of this room alive. And Sansa needs something no one in this room has stopped to ask about. She needs to survive the man who just pushed her aunt through the moon door. She has watched Petyr Baelish destroy people for years. She has watched him lie so cleanly that the truth becomes shameful by comparison. She has been his ward, his project, and his obsession since the night he smuggled her out of King's Landing. Now she is the only witness to what he did. The lords are watching her. Petyr is watching her. What she says in the next 90 seconds will determine whether either of them leaves the Eyrie intact.
She confessed to me she never loved Lord Arryn. She did as her father commanded, as so many of us have. When the gods finally allowed her to be with Lord Baelish, she was so happy.
That phrase, as so many of us have, is not a description of Lysa. It is a mirror Sansa holds up to every man in that room. Lords who commanded daughters, fathers who handed sisters away. She is not appealing to their sympathy. She is appealing to their guilt. She is making them complicit before the lie even arrives. This is the first move she learned from Cersei in Maegor's holdfast during the Battle of Blackwater. Use emotional truth to carry the factual lie. Dress a false account inside something the listener already believes. Cersei did not give Sansa advice that night. She revealed her own operating system, and Sansa filed it away. Projected empathy manipulation. Using shared cultural pain to preload a listener's emotional response before presenting a false narrative. So the lie arrives wrapped inside something the listener already believes is true. The Lords of the Vale entered this hearing as interrogators. Within 60 seconds of Sansa beginning to speak, they became an audience. Interrogators probe. Audiences receive. That is a completely different relationship to truth, and Sansa made the conversion without any of them noticing.
My aunt was a jealous lady. She was terrified that Lord Baelish didn't love her anymore, that he would abandon her for a younger woman.
She is giving Lysa a diagnosis, not a eulogy. A diagnosis. She does not say Lysa was cruel, even though Lysa tried to throw her through a door. She does not say Lysa was unstable. She says Lysa was afraid, because fear is sympathetic. Fear makes a dead woman understandable rather than suspicious, and an understandable death does not require investigation. Notice that Sansa has still not reached the night of the moon door. She has spent nearly 40 seconds building the architecture of Lysa's psychology. She is constructing the room before she places the body inside it. This is patience. This is not a girl improvising under pressure. This is someone who has studied how power uses story and who now uses it herself.
One day, she saw him kiss me.
Lady Sansa.
It was a peck on the cheek, Lord Royce, nothing more.
She names herself as the trigger. She does not deflect. She does not minimize her role in Lysa's breakdown before acknowledging it. She walks directly into the most dangerous part of the testimony and controls it by arriving there first. Because here is the thing about being caught in a lie. The person who names the uncomfortable detail before being asked about it almost always sounds like the person telling the truth. Straightedge vulnerability display. The deliberate exposure of a personal weakness or embarrassing detail in order to appear transparent, thereby building credibility for the larger deception that follows. That word, nothing more, is doing extraordinary work. It is the verbal equivalent of closing a door before someone can open it. Sansa is not saying the kiss did not happen. She is saying it meant nothing. Meaning is what the lords are actually trying to establish. Not fact, meaning. She learned this watching Cersei in court. She learned it watching Petyr reframe every piece of dangerous information into something he controlled. She absorbed the lesson so completely that she now deploys it against the man who taught it to her.
I was so happy to be here, to be free, all because of him. But my aunt turned on me. She cursed me, called me a whore, promised to throw me through the moon door.
Free. She uses that word, and it is the most honest thing she has said in this entire room. She was not free. She is not free now. But the lords do not know that. To them, she is a high-born girl rescued from the capital after her family's destruction, brought north by a man who married her aunt and gave her shelter. The word free makes Petyr Baelish sound like a liberator. It makes Lysa's jealousy sound like a betrayal of someone who deserved protection. But listen to what she is also doing underneath the performance. She is describing what Lysa actually did to her. Lysa did curse her. Lysa did threaten her with the moon door. The emotional reality of Sansa's testimony is real, even when the factual frame is false. She is not inventing emotion. She is borrowing genuine emotion and placing it inside a false sequence of events. The grief in her voice when she describes Lysa's rage, that grief is real. It is just not grief for Lysa. It is grief for every person who was supposed to protect Sansa and chose not to. Affective credibility transfer, the process by which genuine emotional experience is attached to a fabricated account, lending the false narrative the involuntary physiological markers, voice tremor, eye movement, that listeners instinctively read as proof of truth. This cannot be faked. It can only be accessed by someone who has real pain available to draw from. Sansa has years of it. Every lord in that room is reading her body language and concluding she is telling the truth, because her body is telling the truth. Only the story is false.
He tried to reason with her, promised her she was the only one he had ever loved, but she stepped through those doors and
She stops. She does not finish the sentence. The break is not accidental. The trailing and she does more work than any completed statement could. It signals to the room that what came next is too painful for language. Grief that breaks speech is the oldest signal of authenticity that human beings recognize. The lords do not need her to say fell. They have already seen the fall in their own minds. She has outsourced the final image of Lysa's death to their imagination, and imagination is always more convincing than testimony. Narrative control inversion. The act of seizing authorship of a situation's official story before anyone with authority can construct their own version, so that every subsequent question must be answered within the frame you have already built. Petyr Baelish is watching all of this, and this is the detail the entire video turns on. He did not tell Sansa to lie. He did not coach her before this hearing. He walked into this room not knowing what she would say. What she is doing right now is entirely her own. She looked at the situation, the lords, the power structure, the stakes, the story that would keep both of them alive, and she constructed the optimal response without instruction. This is not obedience. This is not gratitude. This is a girl who has studied the most dangerous people in Westeros and learned to think the way they think. She has not become Cersei. She has not become Petyr. She has become something more unsettling than either of them, a person who chooses to use those tools rather than a person who has no other choice.
It's not your fault, sweet girl. It's not your fault.
He says it twice. Watch Petyr Baelish in this moment. He is not relieved. He is recalibrating. He just watched the girl he thought he was managing demonstrate that she does not need to be managed. She managed herself. She managed the room. She managed him. He covers the recalibration with tenderness, because tenderness is what the room expects, and Petyr Baelish always gives rooms what they expect while processing something entirely different behind his eyes. Identification with the aggressor, a survival response first described by Sandor Ferenczi. in which a person under sustained threat begins to think, speak, and act from within the framework of those who hold power over them. Not out of love, but because internalizing their logic is the only way to survive inside it. This is the mechanism the entire video is built around. Sansa Stark did not become a manipulator because she is cruel. She became one because every person who was supposed to protect her, her father's honor, Joffrey's court, Cersei's grudging shelter, Lysa's jealous guardianship, was either destroyed or weaponized against her. She was left with one option: absorb the logic of the powerful and use it to stay alive. The Irie testimony is not a triumph. It is a diagnosis. It shows us exactly how much she has already paid for her survival and what it is slowly costing her to keep paying. It's not your fault, sweet girl. He means it as comfort. She receives it as confirmation. The lie worked. The alliance holds, and the power between them has quietly, permanently shifted. But here is what the show never told you. In George R.R. Martin's novels, Sansa's transformation goes further and darker than anything the screen shows. In A Feast for Crows, Sansa is not simply Petyr Baelish's ward living under a false name. She has become Elaine Stone, a constructed identity Petyr built for her. But what the show softens is how completely she inhabits it. In the books, she does not perform Elaine reluctantly. She begins to lose the boundary between Sansa Stark and Elaine Stone. She catches herself thinking as Elaine, feeling as Elaine. Martin wrote this as a horror, the slow psychological erasure of a self under sustained identity pressure. The show kept the lie. It removed the disillusion. What the books are actually showing is that the deepest consequence of identifying with your aggressor is not that you learn their behavior. It is that you begin to forget which behaviors were originally yours. That changes what the Irie testimony means. It is not only a triumph, it is the first evidence that Sansa's survival strategy is beginning to cost her the thing it was designed to protect. When someone with power teaches you how they think, and you survive by using it, there is a window, early and narrow, where that skill still belongs to you. You chose to pick it up. You can choose to put it down. But the longer you use it, the more it reshapes the hand that holds it. The boardroom version of this is the executive who learns to read a room so well that they can no longer sit in one without automatically calculating who is expendable. The skill becomes the reflex. The reflex becomes the personality. The personality becomes the only self they know how to be. Sansa is standing at the beginning of that window in the Irie. She has not yet lost herself, but she is spending herself to survive, and expenditure always has a cost. Sansa saves Petyr Baelish in that room, consciously, but not for him, for herself, because he is the only protection left in a world that has destroyed everyone else who was supposed to keep her safe. So here is the question. At what point does choosing to protect someone who has harmed you stop being survival and start being something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you in the next.